Hi, Sachsenhausen. Polonia gwarna, parna, Germania richtig dzika Heil. Sachsenhausen. Wirdycie jak bambusik, trupie łebki to kaktusy Heil. Es lebe kule der Kampf.
Welcome to Descendant Stuff, a podcast by and for the descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners, working together to uncover the unanswered questions of its history. Sachsenhausen was a Nazi concentration camp located in Oranienburg, Germany, used from 1936 through April 1945. It was used as a labor camp, with a network of subcamps and worksites around the region, as well as a prison camp, death camp, medical experimentation center, and SS training ground. It was also the administrative center for all Nazi concentration camps. We are Jakob, Kelsey, and Nicole, three descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners. Though our relatives were imprisoned for different reasons, we've discovered we have much in common. In each episode, we interview other descendants, researchers, and even survivors, sharing stories, memories, and research to build a clearer picture of the past, one that goes beyond the records. Through these conversations, we honor those who suffered and died at Sachsenhausen and strengthen our collective understanding of our own ancestors' experiences. This episode was recorded during the commemoration for the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Sachsenhausen in our podcast studio in Tower A, with special assistance from the Sachsenhausen Memorial and Museum. Andrea Tonko, the daughter of Julius Czygan, visited Sachsenhausen and spoke with Kelsey. Julius was born December 21, 1906 in Kiel, Germany. He was a member of the SPD, or Social Democratic Party, and was imprisoned in Sachsenhausen on February 22, 1941 as a political prisoner. He was liberated on the Death March in 1945 close to Lübeck, Germany, where he died in October of 1976.
So I'm very grateful that you're here and you're descendants of prisoner, and I'm grateful to hear your story. So who's in the room?
My name is Andrea Tonko. These are my children.
Madeline?
My name's Desmond.
My dad was a prisoner in Sachsenhausen. I don't know too much about it. He was a political prisoner, a resistance fighter. His name is Julius Czygan. Zygan. He was born in Kiel and was a member of the SPD, and he transferred flyers, nations from Kiel, from Germany to Denmark on small boats, and he got betrayed somehow. And he was picked up at night, just opened the door with pajamas and was picked up just like that.
Where was he picked up from?
He was at home. He was in Kiel. Kiel is a city up in the north, right at the Baltic Sea, close to 1-2 hours to Hamburg. He was first brought to prison, and he had to stay in prison from January 37 to 41. He had to stay in the prison, and then he was transferred to Sachsenhausen as a political prisoner, and they knocked his teeth out here. He didn't really talk about it, not even to my mom. Of course, it was obvious his teeth were gone, and only thing is, in the office where he worked, he said there were lamb shapes made out of tattooed skin.
Where was this? Where was this office?
Here in Sachsenhausen, in the Schreibstube.
Is that the commandant's office?
Yes, the Nazis, they needed help to write lists and whatever, supported the administrative work. So that's what he did. That were the lampshades of the commander or people, not other Nazis working here.
What role did he have in this office that he was working in?
I don't know. I know there were 3 other friends, buddies. They came later on. They came visit him when he was out. So they talked a little to my mom. Last name was Brinkmann. Those were 2 brothers. And I forgot the name. And he was on the death march, was liberated in Lübeck up in the north. He stayed there and met my mom, and they got 3 children, and I'm the youngest. Actually, recently, in the last years, I Googled, probably because it was much easier with internet now. I just Googled his name and continued, and then I found something written in a book called Wir sind das Bauvolk. It's also his name in there. That's how I found out little details, how he was arrested, and that's actually all I know, and I hope maybe they have in Sachsenhausen still in the files some more information.
You're holding this book in front of us and showing me the page with his name on it, and you found this book on the internet. Can you describe the image here that's on the page that you're pointing to?
That's the poster of the Todesmarsch. It just say Julius Czygan survived the evacuation march of Sachsenhausen. And they showed the route from Sachsenhausen to where they had to walk till they were liberated. And that was about 200 kilometers they had to walk with no food and water. And I remember what he told probably my mom, or maybe, his friends told her. It was in April, and they were already very first blooming of the apple trees, barely something. And you people climbed up the trees and ate whatever was edible. And my father was too weak. Luckily, because all the men who climbed up there, they died because of they couldn't digest that. That's what I still remember. That's just about it.
What kinds of stories did he share in his lifetime with the family?
No story. He did not speak. He had one sister, but she had polio as a child, so she was sent into a home. That was at that time custom. And his mother, she was too scared. She was pro-Hitler. So, she just went along with the government at that time. So my dad had no contact with his family after that. So it was just him, my mom, me, and I'm the youngest, and my brother and sister. Nobody came visited us. I don't remember anything. My mom said once at night or late in the evening, somebody rang the doorbell, and my dad just panicked and said, don't open. He went to the restroom and threw up. So that's the only thing what I know. He did not talk about it. He died in 1975 after 10 years laying in bed with a stroke.
How do you think this story got into this book?
I never thought about it. I have to find out.
Because somebody cared.
And it was this little biography, how he got betrayed, where I marked it with a marker. I just found the book a few years ago. And I read it. Of course, I was really, really into it. But at the same time, as much as I'm interested in, I'm also want to close my eyes, don't want to know anything about it. Yeah.
What makes you feel that way?
Probably approaching the story because that's part of my life. And I remember I was in Miami once, and there was a Holocaust memorial. So I went in there. By chance, I walked by. It was an elderly gentleman sitting there. And I don't know how we started talking, but he said he was a Holocaust survivor. And I told him at that moment, the first time I talked to him as a stranger. And I remember I started really crying hard, yeah. And I thought I have no right to cry because what he went through, he couldn't cry. At that time, you suffer for 8 years, and if you cry, you will be punished. And I thought, I don't have no rights to show any emotions I feel, yeah. So I have to be neutral.
Do you have questions today that you are curious about that you would want to have answered about his story?
Yes, I would like to know all details. Actually, the day first when he arrived, what he saw, the impressions, what he felt. Was it lifetime for him? He was a young man at that time. Or did he think it was just a few days? Or it cannot be possible that he's here, or if he will ever survive. Oh, yeah, right. I remember that he wrote a letter to my mother. He telling my mom, January 30th, 46, that's my first letter to you. They probably just met right after he got liberated in Lübeck. And he said, ja, meine liebe Charlotte, my dear Charlotte. And he never said concentration camp. That's a new word. They just said camp at that time. People always just talk about camp. That was the word. And he said before he met her, living in the camp or staying in the camp, he planned his future to be
Celibacy.
right. And another thing is when he was pretty successful in his career, he was director of a school, and we always put all the money in food. He said, I don't want to buy a house. I don't want to put money into, I want to live now. So we got always the delicacy. We always went to a certain store where we got certain food. Yeah, so it was we were not really living large, right? But we had cloth napkins, and Fridays we had silverware for fish, so only fish knives and a butter knife. And so it was really that at a department store, they called my dad and said when the new children collection came in, so my mom came in and picked the new children collection. So we never owned a house, just living for rent. And lucky he did it because he got liberated 45, 65, he already got a stroke. So 20 good years, right? 20 good years, and he ate good for 20 years, yeah, instead of saving money and owning a house. We had a nice house, but
What made all three of you want to come here now?
Actually, I saw something on TV about Sachsenhausen, die Kinder of der Nachkommen, the children of the prisoners, and I thought, oops, that's me. Yeah, I watch everything and I try to read everything what I get. They mentioned that on May 4th, they will have something going on here for the survivors. So I went on internet and checked, and I found out about the information evening, only that part. I registered for that today, and I asked two of my children, we have more children, who were able to come. So, and I'm living in Berlin, so I have access, and I only been here twice.
What made you decide to say yes to your mom when she asked you to come?
Well, I'm kind of a history buff. First and foremost, I want to show support to my mom. And I am named after my grandfather. So that's my middle name. So it's only right that I also know a little bit more about him.
Did you know about him growing up?
Only what my mom knows, I didn't meet him. He passed before I was even born. So yeah, only what my mom was able to tell me or share.
What did it mean to you growing up, this history in your family?
It meant a lot, showed that there's resilience in my family, showed that, my family, part of my family, we're doing right for doing good, trying to do good for a right cause. So yeah, I'm proud of that for sure.
Can you tell me the same thing? What made you say yes to your mom and what it means for you?
So I'm the youngest kid in the family, and my older siblings are a little bit older than me. So I think when they left the house, my mom had more time to actually focus on this topic because I was the only one still living at my house. And so I feel like I had a lot of exposure to this history from a very early age on. And I always cared about World War II as a topic, and especially obviously the Holocaust. And I always walked in this type of confidence that my grandfather was a resistance fighter, even as a child. So for me, it was obvious that I had to show up here as well, also in support of my mom. And I'm happy I came.
We are all sitting at a table now as descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoner, and I'm wondering what you think the power of your voices now. What does it mean now today? Do you, especially as there are very few survivors, the voice of what happened here is less and less theirs, and it's more and more ours, not because we chose it, but because we're here. And so I wonder what you think that significance is for you.
So I was born and raised in Berlin, And I think that Sachsenhausen is a pretty small concentration camp in comparison to what we know about Auschwitz, like the biggest one. And it's very close to the capital. And I actually think, also from friends' experience, that a lot of people don't know that we have this concentration camp so close next to the capital of Germany. And I feel like it's very important to set a focus on this particular concentration camp because it was also opened very early. And my grandpa also, I kind of mess up the story a little bit. But yes, I think it's just important to talk about Sachsenhausen more due to this. And for me particularly, because my grandpa was a resistance fighter, I'm very interested in the resistance fighter stories because I feel like growing up on TV and the documentaries were mostly about Jewish victims. And we don't know too much about people who actually worked behind the scenes to try to save lives. Yeah. And to give them their flowers.
My last question is, I have two last questions. The one that Madeline just answered was about what this means to be the voice of this next generation who has inherited the legacy of being a Sachsenhausen prisoner. Now with less survivors and only descendants, what does your voice as a descendant mean in the world?
I think I am responsible for speaking up or for showing up or for just being there, telling whoever likes to know who my father was and what happened at that time and how it took place, and seeing the similarities 100 years ago, that it seems like a repeating. Of course, people nowadays think, yeah, no, it's not repeating. Yes. Yeah, it's really terrible. Yeah, it's terrifying seeing the similarities. How people really are followers again. It was not Hitler, it just the follower and all the German. And I grew up too, Germans are not good, I was never proud to be Germans, and soccer was, my parents always said, oh, Germany should not win soccer games because, it goes up to the head, they thinking they're superior anyway. So, and I'm still feeling uncomfortable soccer games when people being, the world champions, right? And say Germany, and it's no. Yeah. So yeah, this is really, I don't know how to speak up, but like you said, we all descendants, so we all count. Yeah. So it's the number counts. Yeah. And of course, feeling responsibility to the next generation, to my children, to speak up because it's really because my father was already 50 when I was born. Yeah. That's why it's still my father. To a lot of people, it's the grandfather, yeah? So it's really my father, yeah? We need to do something. We need to speak up. We need to be there, to show up.
Thank you. Thank all of you for taking the time to record and share your story.
Heil Sachsenhausen. A jak będę jutro wzdychał lewą nóżką, ci zawtikam. Heil, es Lübeck, to Kampf.